In the United States, that has manifested itself dramatically in an upsurge in deportations of migrants with the allegation that there are too many illegal immigrants. The opinion has prevailed over the facts. The size of the undocumented, unauthorized, or illegal population is far much smaller than what we think, what the media says. But what is more dramatic is that the trend of deportation that has taken place in the last 5 years is as much as double the number of immigrants that have come into the United States in the last 5 years. Just to give you an idea, last year 26,000 people were deported to Honduras. These are not people trying to cross the border. Okay, that's a different number. But these are people who were here in the United States and were caught while in the U.S. territory. The number of migrants that came from Honduras is less than 10,000, 15,000 people. And this is a phenomenon that is taking place, that has been going on for years, and it's not likely to decrease this year nor the next. What this is going to have is an effect on the volume of remittance transfers. Not only people are feeling intimidated, but also there is an effect just simply by the numbers. And unfortunately, the argument that had been made in the political environment, the political rhetoric that is made in Washington, that these deportations were as a means to protect the borders because most of the people who were deported were people with a criminal background, is not true. Only 40% of those deported people had some criminal background. And even when you look at the criminal background, these are people who basically committed traffic violations 3 times. Yes, you have other type of violent offenders, but the problem is that you're actually seeing a pattern that is overwhelming many countries, especially in Mexico, Central America, and the Caribbean. The rate of deportations is overwhelming not only the public administration, people don't know what to do. Just think about 2,000 people coming into a poor country like El Salvador, Honduras, or Guatemala. Doesn't have resources on what to do and how to reintegrate them into the local economy. Many of these people have been on average 7 years away from their home countries. So they are not familiar with things happening. Many people are trying to return because they have set roots in the United States. This is something that is going to affect and is affecting the sending of money. And perhaps in the short term is having a greater effect in the money transfers than the recession itself. In fact, if we look at the migrant labor force, at least among Latin Americans, is been declining for the past 7 years. By this year, migrant labor force is less than 1%. And this is something that will continue in the short term. These developments are not something that can stop within 1 year, but they are organic things that have a demonstration effect over time, and one needs to watch on those issues. Another development that is taking place that I mentioned before is how increasingly migration is turning more female and skilled. And whether we look at the United States, France, Italy, Spain, or other parts of the world where there are host countries taking on migrants, we see that the percent of women with a tertiary education is higher than that of men with a tertiary education, who are also skilled. This is something very important, and what it points out is that not only that this is a significant number, but that they are also sending more money. Now, this is an important feature because not only gives you signals about what is coming in the next few years in terms of the look of migrants, but also in terms of an important fact, and is that skilled migrants, professional migrants who are connected to their home countries are more likely to use technology-based payments for money transfers than cash-to-cash transfers. So one needs to be more attentive to this reality of the changing look of migration. And it's something that is important to be preparing for this development, if not be already prepared. Another phenomenon is climate change. Climate change is something that we didn't take seriously. I grew up in Nicaragua, and throwing plastic in the street was the right thing to do because someone was going to pick it up at some point. Today, we know that that damage is beyond repair, and that the extent of the environment today is not in good shape, and that it does have an effect on people. The number of natural disasters that are taking place in Latin America is not negligible. At least 2 disasters take place in most of Mexico, Central America, and the Caribbean, Colombia, and Ecuador. And the effect that it has is basically that it has destruction of human lives as well as destruction of physical infrastructure. It diminishes assets and affects the economy in general. But there is another effect, and that is of human mobility. Increasingly, more people are migrating because of natural disasters, because their dwellings are affected. They try to go to other places, but eventually the environment themselves shakes its body out and takes you out of the country. Now, this in the short term doesn't have much effect on remittance transfers because only the locations where the disaster took place is the one that is benefiting from, receive new transfers, more money, that's a relative sense to that location. But in the long term, because you will see an increase of more migrants that are environmentally affected, the volume of remittances will increase towards the future. Another reality is the cost of living. There is a strong relationship between the average amount sent and the cost of living. It is no accident why an immigrant from Mexico sends more than an immigrant from El Salvador or one from Honduras or Nicaragua or Colombia or Ecuador. Cost of living varies from country to country. But what we see also is that associated to this cost of living is that commodity prices are becoming more standardized. And many countries have put their hopes in agricultural exports. What happens is that the growth in commodity prices of agricultural exports, such as coffee or bananas, hasn't grown in the same speed that the growth of commodity prices in beans, for example, or rice. So the cost of living is increasing as we integrate more in the global economy. That is going to have an effect on migration, but also in the amount of remittances sent. Other phenomenon that is very important to consider is that the intersection between migration and development is becoming more intertwined. The volume of activities that immigrants maintain with their home country extend beyond sending money. An immigrant invests in their home country. They consume home country goods. They provide philanthropic activities and donations to their home country. Those type of activities are increasingly becoming more frequent, but also relying on the use of new payment networks. And so the development of payment networks, the use of financial services and technology applications to serve this reality, this demand, is trying to catch up with the migrant demands, but also on the receiving side. For example, one of the issues is the use of non-corresponding agents. More and more payment networks are expanding beyond the use of banks. Second, we see that there are regulatory environments that are benefiting financial access. This is a phenomenon that is happening and is growing in intensity. Adapting your platforms to accept and honor account transfers from an individual to be paid in cash is one key marketing strategy. But on the internet side of things, we also see that there is growth in the offer of internet services. There are at least 7 companies in the United States that are active in the money transfer business. There are a double number of companies that are offering card-based transfers. And the results are not negligible. Just one company alone is performing today over 700,000 transactions a month. They started only 5 years ago with less than 50,000 transfers. The demand is growing radically. And the number of users is looking not only to perform remittance transfers, but also do other type of financial transfers. Banks are getting into this activity, also offering account transfers to their clients. Even Western Union, that doesn't promote their mobile devices, their mobile applications for money transfers or the internet transfers, is growing also in numbers, yet is not advertising its success. So there is a growing number of transfers that is taking place. So in conclusion, what we see is a changing world that is going in different directions. Climate change is likely to push more people out and eventually lead to more remittances. Female skilled labor is likely to continue growing and having more remittances sent. Anti-immigrant sentiments are going to decline the number of migrants that are to come, but also are affecting already the number of migrants who can send money. Other trends that are likely to take place are more in the political context. Latin America is undergoing also an important transition when it comes to political institutions. The entire global landscape of democratization in Latin America also reached the tail end of a democratization stage that started in the 1970s. The wave of democratization that started in the 70s and came to South America in the early 80s, then to Central America in the late 80s, and consolidated with some democratic changes in the 1990s, basically is reaching an end. We see emerging power vacuums today as a result of an important development, which is that the people who carried out these transitions are not only reaching a political end of their careers, but also their physical life is also reaching an end. Now, the problem is that they didn't replenish, they didn't continue a new generation of leaders. So whether you're looking at Nicaragua, Guatemala, Argentina, Dominican Republic, what you see is a lot of political recycling taking place in most of these countries. The effect in the short term, in the next 5 years, is this political vacuum that may yield to growing social protest, civil disobedience, and demonstration that can take place into migration. This is not the spring. The Middle East phenomenon is part of this old wave of democratization. Latin America is going to enter into a new political wave that is likely to be democratic, but is not going to be pleasant in the short-term future. It may have an effect on migration too. It may have an effect on the ability of people to send money. So what we see is definitely a slow growth, quite moderate in the short term, and likely to see some change in the near future. So what type of future growth are we likely to see? I think probably more like 2010 in the next 5 years. Is it good news or bad news? Is the reality. What one needs to look is beyond the 5-year term and try to prepare to what is definitely a new wave of migration and a new way of doing money transfers, and be ready for that development because it's going to happen. It's already happening. We're already seeing the signs. And so it's an important issue to keep into consideration. So thank you very much.